Hello and welcome to another 5-in-1 Mayaani Talks with me, Mega of Mayaani Jewellery. Now, we have just completed a wonderful tour of some of the jewelry traditions across the world, exploring not exactly continent by continent, but somewhat. We looked at the Americas, we looked particularly North American jewelry traditions, African jewelry traditions, European jewelry traditions, Southeast Asian jewelry traditions, and Indian jewelry traditions briefly as well, which is where this next series leads into. Now, having been unaware of just how many Indian jewelry traditions there actually are across India, despite being Indian myself, I decided I needed to create a series dedicated to the jewelry traditions that exist across India, exploring them region by region. So we begin today with exploring Rajasthan's jewelry traditions. Now, Rajasthan's jewelry traditions are amongst the most visually captivating and also amongst the most visually intricate in the world as well. And they are very beautifully layered, not just with details, with precision meeting beauty, but also with storytelling and meaning, behind the meaning behind the pieces as well. So let's look at a couple of these together today. I think Rajasthan's jewelry traditions are essentially beautiful. If we were to summarize them, they're an act of devotion, they're about dynasty, and they're about desert craftsmanship as well. So let's look into this a little bit more, starting number one with Kundan and Meenakari. Now, I've got my notes here, which I may refer to from time to time. Now, Kundan and Meenakari. Now, Kundan is one of the most intricate jewelry techniques in India, across India, one of the oldest and most intricate jewelry techniques across India, and it originated in the royal courts of Rajasthan and Delhi, and it particularly became popular during the Mughal era. And Kundan essentially is gold foiling around gemstones, so rough, uncut gemstones are very beautifully wrapped with softened gold. The gold is softened, it is then pressed against all of the edges of the stone. There is no gripping, there are no prongs, there are no claws. The stone is not being forced to stay in place. Which I think is the impression you get or the feeling you get when something's being clawed at, when there are prongs holding something in place. When something's being gripped in place, there's this element or this feeling of force being associated with it. In the case of Kundan, because the gold foil work involves softening the gold and making it sort of coat and cover and press against all of the edges of the rough uncut stone, essentially what you're doing is bringing the two materials together as if they always belong together. And the result is a very seamless and beautifully smooth, polished glow which is what you receive from the pieces. The pieces don't sparkle like they would if the gemstones were actually polished and cut, but they glow. And glow, I like to think, comes from within something. Glow is something that can be dimmed or brightened, but never really taken away from something. Whereas sparkle almost gives this idea that something's being added onto something and therefore it can eventually be taken away. So I love that. I love that with Kundan pieces, there is this glow that just seems to come from within the pieces because of the way the gold and the gemstones have been worked together and because the gemstones have not been polished and cut. And Kundan is, when it comes to an authentic piece of Kundan, it is finished off on the back face, on the reverse face, with Meenakari enamel. And the Meenakari enamel is typically in lots of beautiful, vivid colors which echo or mirror the landscape you see in Rajasthan. So, for example, the deep blues of the desert skies, the beautiful greens of the oases found in Rajasthan, the oranges of the sunsets that you see in Rajasthan. So, the Meenakari enamel involves lots of vivid colors which echo the Rajasthan's landscape. And that is a very important point to note because it is only seen, that level of finishing is only seen in authentic Kundan pieces of jewelry. And the reason for that is that Kundan pieces of jewelry are not created from a commercial viewpoint. They're not created with a commercial thinking hat on. They're created from a devotional viewpoint with a devotion in mind. So essentially, you're creating something beautiful to honor something sacred, which is a woman's body. Because in Hinduism and across India in general, whether religion is involved or not, the human body is seen as sacred and seen as the seat, in the case of woman, of divine feminine energy. And so it's a very spiritual thing. So for that reason, when you're creating something beautiful to be placed on a woman's body, on something sacred, then it's an act of devotion. It's not merely about performance, as is the case with a lot of mainstream, commercialized, and largely Eurocentric jewelry, or Western jewelry, for want of a better word. Um, the general mainstream jewelry we see, which is largely influenced by European ideas, does not give as much precedence to the back face of the jewelry, the reverse side. It is only the side that we see, that we can all admire and ooh and ah over, that's actually given that level of detail and care and attention. But in Kundan, the entire piece is considered, because beauty is considered from a viewpoint of wholeness. The whole piece deserves the same level of care, attention, and love, not just the performance side. So I love that about Kundan. And essentially, when wearing a piece of Kundan jewelry, therefore, we ourselves might have this sense of wholeness coming from the piece. That face that has been completed is secret and viewed only really by us. The maker knows it, of course, the artisan, whoever else may have seen our piece that we have revealed the back face to sees it. But otherwise, it's almost like something private, something secret that we only know, that nobody else knows. Almost like knowing yourself, how you know who you are on the inside, and that is your best kept secret. And no one will ever entirely know just who you are on the inside. So it's a bit, I think it's a bit like that. Number two, Thewa. Now, Thewa originated in Pratapgarh in Rajasthan, and it is exclusively owned, and the creative craft form of the Raj Soni family of Rajasthan. And actually, in 2018, it received a geographical indication tag, which means that it has now received recognition that this particular craft form comes from a specific place, belongs to a specific group of people, and cannot be replicated anywhere else. So essentially, the artisans who work in creating Thewa jewelry are all from the same lineage. They're all from the Raj Thewa bloodline. And essentially, what this means is that when you wear a piece of Thewa jewelry, what you are doing is wearing the entire Raj Soni family's lineage and their legacy as well. Now, this particular type of jewelry involves 23 karat gold being very intricately fused together with colored glass in such a way that the two materials essentially create pieces of jewelry that look like paintings. And the beautiful thing about this type of craft form is you have generations of one family passing knowledge from hand to hand over hundreds of years, essentially creating a living relationship, not just between the makers today and the makers of the past, and the makers today and the traditions of the past and the stories of the past, but between the makers of today and their ancestors and their personal family history, heritage, and legacy. And the beautiful thing about this level of protecting a family's unique craft form is that by protecting Thewa and by making sure it's exclusively created by and owned by the Raj Soni family, essentially, the family has ensured that this particular craft form stays out of mass production. It cannot be commercialized, it cannot be cheapened or remade using cheaper quality materials, and it cannot be diluted in its meaning and the power of the story behind it as well. So I think it's a beautiful example of a not only a beautifully intricate form of jewelry, of art, but it is also a beautiful example of what happens when a family over generations stays dedicated and committed to something, because they all see the value and importance in it, and all recognize what could be lost if they were ever to surrender their guardianship of this particular craft form. Now, number three, Borla to Bichya. So, what do I mean here? Well, basically, in Rajasthan, largely all the Rajasthani Jewelry traditions treat the body as a sacred map. And as such, adorning it should always be a conscious act with specific intentions in mind, with every part of the body being considered in the process of creating jewelry, and every piece that you create not only having a place on the body, but also having a specific intention behind why you created that piece or what you created the piece for. So the borla, to begin with, is a piece of jewelry which is largely spherical and looks a bit like a flower bud. And essentially, by looking like a flower bud, not only does it represent life in perfect form, for example, but it also represents potential. But that borla, that spherical, um, typically spherical jeweled piece, is worn at the Brahma, the center of the Brahmarandra, at the Brahmarandra, which is the crown of the head or the seat of higher consciousness. Now, interestingly, it doesn't exactly sit at the seat of higher consciousness, the Brahmarandra or the crown, as you might imagine. Because in my mind, I imagine this piece sitting literally on the crown of the head. It does not. It actually sits high up on the hairline. But you would think, how is it therefore connected to the crown of the head? Well, there is actually a chain that runs from the borla, which sits around here, up to the crown of the head, anchoring it at the crown of the head. So therefore, it is seen to basically be being worn. It's being anchored at the crown of the head. So it's in honor of the crown of your head that you wear this piece. Now, it's not to be confused with the mang tika or chandlo, as we call it in Gujarat, which is similar but typically flat and not spherical, three-dimensional. Typically, the mangtika is flat and it's worn over the third eye, in between the eyebrows, as opposed to higher up like the borla. And the borla, as I mentioned, is spherical, so it's typically a three-dimensional. It doesn't have to be, but typically it's three-dimensional. And in days gone by, it was actually much, much bigger than the borlas that actually are created to be worn today. But essentially, by wearing a borla, the wearer, the woman who's wearing the borla, is not only receiving protection, she's also receiving blessings at the same time through wearing this piece. Um, and in some communities across Rajasthan, wearing the borla actually is seen as an act of devotion towards Ma Lakshmi, the goddess of beauty, prosperity, and auspiciousness. Um, and the reason behind that is because Mahalakshmi is often depicted across temples in all sorts of paintings with elaborate head pieces of jewelry, headdresses, head adornments, and alongside that, yes. So basically, because of that, because she's seen wearing a lot of elaborate headpieces, wearing a borla is seen to be an act of devotion towards Mahalakshmi. Now there are other pieces as well. That's the particularly prominent one to mention, but there's also the Aad, AAD, and that is a choker that is worn, a very beautiful, intricate, typically gold, broad collar or choker that's worn over the seat of Vishuddha, the Vishuddha chakra, which is seen as the seat of expression, truth, and authentic voice. It's worn over that to protect that particular region of a woman and also to honor the sacred power of a woman's voice. So this is why that particular piece is worn. There is the bajuband, which is worn over the arm, higher up over here, and it is again typically made of gold or some form of metal, and that is an armlet which wraps the upper arm to provide strength, protection, and also marital well-being or marital bliss. You've got the kamarband, which is worn around a woman's waist. A lot of these pieces would typically be worn on a woman's wedding day, but don't have to be. The kamarband is a waist ornament that is worn because it is seen to protect a woman's womb, which is essentially seen as the seat of creativity and the seat of life giving power. So it is not only protecting that, but it's also honoring the creative power and the life giving power of a woman's womb. You've got the Hathful, which is an Indian hand bracelet, which essentially has a bracelet, a wrist bracelet, which connects to rings that are on your fingers. You can have one or more rings on the finger. Some Hathfuls have rings, all five fingers with rings on them connecting to this bracelet. Sometimes you have two, sometimes you have three, but essentially this heartful is a piece that is created to honor the sacredness of the human hand. That's because the hand in Hinduism is seen as one of the most sacred parts of a human being. It is the part of the body that gives, that receives, that creates, but can also destroy. You've then finally got the bichya. Bichya are rings worn on the toes. Again, you can wear one or all. So all five toes can have a ring, or you can simply have a couple of toes adorned with the rings. But essentially, what you're doing through dressing from head to toe in these pieces at the different points that they're worn, from the crown of the head to the seat of authentic voice and original voice and expression and truth, all the way through to your armband, to your waist, down to your toes and your hand as well. Essentially, by adorning all these points, you are connecting the crown and the root chakras together, with that bichya, the toe rings, being your final connection between the entire body and the earth. So you can see how in this particular Rajasthani jewelry tradition, you have the entire body being treated as a beautiful sacred map. Now, on to number four, tribal silver. Now, tribal silver jewelry traditions across Rajasthan are less well spoken of. Kundan is quite widely known and well known. So are lak bangles, for example. But when it comes to and some of these adornments like the hathful, the bajuband, the kamarband, some of these are known of. But when it comes to the tribal jewelry traditions of Rajasthan, those are less spoken of. But they are no less deeply meaningful or layered with intricate design and precision in the design work and craftsmanship. This is where desert craftsmanship comes in. So essentially, amongst the nomadic and semi-nomadic communities in Rajasthan, the women of these communities would wear their entire wealth in the form of heavy silver jewelry, whether it's armlets, anklets, amulets. It could be layered silver. They could also be wearing layered silver necklaces, headpieces, you name it. But they essentially wore their entire financial um, security in the form of heavy pieces of silver jewelry. And these pieces of silver jewelry were worn on the body because it was seen and is still today seen as one of the safest places to carry the wealth, to wear it, and one of the easiest ways to port it around from place to place. Because if you're nomadic or semi nomadic, you're moving around very frequently. So they had to have a way to not only keep what they had safe because it was their financial security. It's essentially the entire wealth, not just of the woman, but often of her entire family being worn on her body. So you have to keep it safe, so wear it on the body. And also, it's easier to carry around this way. And interestingly, the weight of this jewelry is actually heavy, not just by ancient standards, it's heavy by modern standards. So these pieces of jewelry are incredibly heavy. But wearing them, whilst you might think was a burden or could be a burden, it's actually not seen or felt or experienced as a burden by, well, I mean, I imagine there are aches and pains involved, but essentially when a woman's wearing these pieces, they are not seen as a burden. It is seen as an honor to be wearing such heavy pieces, because these pieces not only reflect her security and stability, they reflect her sovereignty, her own power in the universe, in the cosmos, and they also reflect her future, the stability of her future and the future of her family. So wearing these pieces is actually considered a big honor. Um, Essentially, by wearing a woman wealth, a woman can truly have ownership over her wealth, is how it was seen. There's no husband involved, no marital family involved, no in-laws involved, no bank involved, or nothing between the woman and her wealth. Basically, nothing stands in the way in between them. And because she wears her pieces so often as well, they're essentially an extension of herself. They are as inseparable from her as she is inseparable from them, because she wears them all the time, not just on specific occasions. And finally, but not least, is lak bangles. Now, you may have heard of these. They're quite popular across social media in particular, and have become more popular today thanks to social media, I imagine, or more widely known of. But lak bangles are created with lak resin, and they are then studded with mirror or glass work, and they're worn typically in stacks. And they're one of the most joyful expressions of Rajasthani jewelry traditions. In this case, in the case of lak bangles, adornment is not about restraint and being restricted or being reserved. It's very much about being bold and really fully unapologetically announcing yourself. So there are very vivid colors used in the creation of these bangles. You may marry together whatever colors you wish to marry together within each bangle or within the stack even. So you might choose to have a bangle made of a couple of different colors, or have several different bangles, each of a different color, and wear them together. There are no rules, essentially. There's true freedom to express yourself as boldly and unapologetically as you wish to with lak bangles. And the colors are not misplaced either. There is intention behind them. Not everyone may know this. I don't know the full scope of it, but a couple of the colors I came across were red. Red, of course, in general across India is seen as an auspicious color. It is seen as the color associated with life force. So red in a bangle would represent this. Green is more about fertility and growth, which makes sense, nature growing, so fertility and growth. And mirrors are largely added to catch and throw light, to kind of as I imagine, enhance and accentuate all these colors, as well as enhance and accentuate your announcement of yourself, because you're wearing these bangles in celebration of you, essentially, not just your heritage and traditions, but of you, because you can choose the colors you wish to pair together and how you wish to wear them. And these are bangles are designed to be worn throughout a woman's life, from everything from work to moving, moving, working, celebrating, living life. As she's living life, she's wearing these bangles. They're moving through life with her. And essentially, what these bangles do is show us that beauty is inseparable from a woman's day to day life. Beauty is not just for certain moments of her life, it's actually completely inseparable from her life to begin with. So, having looked at all these beautiful traditions, and looking at how Rajasthan's Jewelry traditions capture not only what was worn in the royal courts across Rajasthan, in the case of Kundan jewelry, for example, but also what was worn amongst the more tribal communities in Rajasthan, such as the women, as I mentioned, who wear their entire weight on their bodies. Um, the beautiful thing about Rajasthani Jewelry tradition is that nothing was ever placed on the body without conscious thought, without intention, without a reason behind why this piece was being worn and why it was being worn, where it was being worn as well, and without a reason behind what was being used to create it at the same time. If you have ever worn any one of these pieces, I'm curious to know if you understood or have and always understood the full meaning behind these pieces, because I think with a lot of bridal wear across India, not just in Rajasthan, but across India, a lot of bridal wear. The pieces that brides are wearing tend to be chosen more from an aesthetic viewpoint, from point of view of what will look good, what will photograph well, what complements her outfit, and less from a viewpoint of the intention behind why she's wearing these pieces. And that's not because it's not no that's no one person's fault. That's largely because the stories along the way have not been told. So she has not received the meaning or the messages, the stories behind why she's wearing the pieces she's wearing, which could be why, to some degree, when you look at Indian bridal wear and a lot of bridal wear traditions across the world today, they have moved away from brides wearing all of the pieces to just choosing what they want to wear. And that is okay. There's nothing wrong with choosing what pieces you wish to wear. But I think it's much more powerful to make that choice once you understand why all those pieces were being worn in the first place. And then from that point of view, you take the decision about whether you want to wear all those pieces on your wedding day or on your body. So, yes, I hope this has given you a good insight into Rajasthani jewelry traditions. We will look next into jewelry traditions across a different region in India. I'm looking at North India next. So, join me when we take a look at those traditions. But for now, I wish you a beautiful week ahead. And remember, because your jewelry should always be more than just an afterthought. Bye for now.